A new report by the United Nations has established that there are, quote, reasonable grounds to believe that rape and gang rape occurred during the October 7th terror attacks led by Hamas against Israel. The UN mission interviewed survivors and witnesses of the attack and examined 50 hours of video footage and thousands of photographs to arrive at this conclusion. The special representative on sexual violence and conflict said she and a team of experts had found clear and convincing information about rape and sexualized torture. The report also said that some claims of rape could not be verified, but there was convincing information that hostages taken from Israel were and might still be subjected to sexual violence during their captivity. The UN envoy let out her findings in more detail. Here's some more of what she said.
We also found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, occurred during the 7th of October attacks in at least 3 locations, namely the Nova Music Festival site and its surroundings, Road 232 and Kibbutz Reim. And in most of these incidents, victims were first subjected to rape and then killed, and at least 2 incidents relate to the rape of women's corpses. With regard to the hostages taken to Gaza, we found clear and convincing information that sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, has been committed against captives. And we also have reasonable grounds to believe that such violence may still be ongoing against those still held in captivity. I pause and must add that I am of the strong opinion that this finding does not in any way legitimize further violence, but actually reinforces the need for an urgent ceasefire.
Let's bring in Christina Lamb. She's a chief foreign correspondent for the Sunday Times and has spent much of her career covering the use of rape as a weapon. She's the author of the book, Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, What War Does to Women. Welcome back to DW, Christina. Now, you yourself went to Israel in the aftermath of October 7th. What do you make of the UN's findings?
Yeah, well, I mean, the findings are really similar to what I found, which is that there is a lot of, as they say, convincing information that there was sexual violence carried out on October the 7th. But I think they also found that it was very hard to find any actual survivors to speak to. So there were witnesses, there were people who had been collecting the bodies of people that were killed and finding them in positions that suggested that they had been raped and finding semen on the body, things like that. But it was hard to find anybody who'd actually been raped and survived and would speak about it.
Yeah. Did you find that to be the biggest challenge when you went to cover the aftermath of October 7th?
Yeah, I mean, as having reported an awful lot on sexual violence and interviewed people in many different countries about it, I know that it's extremely difficult for people to speak about it. And, you know, I know cases where it's taken 50 years for people to come forward and speak. So the fact that people have not come forward and spoken doesn't mean that there aren't survivors, but of course there is the rather grim possibility that everybody that it happened to was either killed afterwards or was taken hostage.
You write in your book that rape is the most neglected war crime. How big a factor do you think is the fact that it's so hard to document?
Yeah, it's hard to document. It's hard for people to come forward. But the reason that it's the most neglected war crime is that, unfortunately, accountability is the exception, not the rule. It's really hard for people to get justice. So there have been many cases in recent years where thousands of women have come forward, such as the Yazidis who were taken by Islamic State and kept as sex slaves 10 years ago. girls like the Chibok girls in Nigeria that were taken by Boko Haram. But again, that was just the tip of the iceberg. There were tens of thousands taken in northeastern Nigeria. The Rohingya people in Burma or Myanmar that were taken from their villages and raped by Burmese military or Buddhist militias. In all of those cases, we have huge numbers of testimonies, but not a single person had been brought to justice in any of those cases, except recently in Germany for some of the Yazidis. But it's a very small number, but it is a start.
Why do you think that is, if so many women have come forward?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, of course, rape anyway is a crime where it is difficult to get justice. In my country, United Kingdom, only less than 2% of women that reported rape last year actually saw anybody charged. So imagine in a country where you've got war going on, or the perpetrators are people running the country or running the area, or the people that it's happened to are refugees or displaced people and don't have resources. So, of course, it's going to be much, much harder. But I think there's another reason, which is that every case I found that had been successfully prosecuted, there had always been a female judge or a female prosecutor. So that doesn't seem like coincidence. So I think we need to have far more women judges. And I also believe that, unfortunately, when conflicts come to an end and there are peace talks, that this is often regarded as a side issue. And so people will be brought to justice for killing and torture, but not for rape. And I believe that that's partly because there's so few women in these peace talks. And but that, is how it's been. If you go back to Nuremberg, for example, which people often hold up as, the great example of international justice, nothing was done about all of the millions of women that were raped at the end of the Second World War in Germany and Eastern Europe. There's no mention of it. So it is something that traditionally has just been sidelined at the end of conflicts, and that needs to change.
Yeah. The report also points at allegations of conflict-related sexual violence against Palestinians after October 7th. Does that surprise you at all?
Well, I mean, there have previously been reports in the Israeli jails, Palestinian women saying that they've been sexually assaulted. So this is, again, the same kind of report. So unfortunately, it's very depressing, but every conflict that I looked at in my book or have reported on, there seems to be sexual violence. I mean, obviously, we also saw it again in Ukraine. And it just, one of the militias that I interviewed said to me, it's the cheapest weapon. It costs less than a Kalashnikov bullet. And sadly, if you want to humiliate your enemy or terrorize them or take territory, raping the women and girls is an effective way of doing that.
That was Christina Lamb, Chief Foreign Correspondent for Britain's Sunday Times. Thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Pleasure. Thank you.